One. Hi, and welcome to Code Win Talk. I'm Dano, my co-host Johnny Pizza, a combat Vietnam veteran who is the recipient of the Purple Heart and Silver Courage under the line of fire, saving three comrades in the fight in Vietnam. I am the National Chief Advocate for Disabled Americans, Veterans, Police, Firemen, and Families. I've been doing that since 1983. Had the recognition of four presidents and support. Two other presidents chose not to support me, and they were Democrats. It's okay, freedom in America. But today's question, is America really free? The constitutional question that we're going to talk about today is the liberties that come under challenge to people like myself with disabilities under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. We have a guest that has a controversy, and we have a candidate for Congress, John Hayes, my friend, and also my friend and co-chair in the Coalition to Save America on Twitter with me and our candidacy, who is speaking of the controversy of the Constitution. Who's going to tell us about how we're brought to you through Triple Vibes Radio. We have our great executive producers on the technical side. We have Sean, we got Dougie Fresh, and we're going to have a show with them talking about the background, as I tell you about that. We're going to have them and Dougie and Ruben, people that do the technical end. Here, I'm the executive producer and the creator, and John is my co-host, and also now a creator with me for the format that goes forward, and Shannon is our commentator and mediator, and the others are contributors, and John is a contributor, he's a friend, and he's going to be, if he wins the seat in Congress, the good thing about it is he's a true patriot. He's not a politician or a phony. He will always be here with us for the constitutional question that we will all ask. If I make it, I won't have to enter the 2022 election. All of the viewers already know that I am a candidate and suffered voter fraud and the infringement of my voters and my constituency of disabled Americans. But we don't want to delay anymore. But we want to tell you about the three books, and then we're going to get right to the show. We got the CV19, America After COVID. You can view that at the CV19mag.com. And then we have John's book, The Last Goodbye-book.com, which will tell you the amazing story of two heroic family members, cousins, that grew up like brothers from the Bronx, New York, and went and fought in that Vietnam War, and only one survivor came back. And that's an amazing story that me and John and our friend David Carlton Back, who's a producer and is working with us, and me and John and Dave, I wanted to bring this into a mini series instead of just a feature film. I thought it would be best, and we discussed that, and we put a treatment together, and you're going to hear more about that. When you go to the link, you'll see the videos where I'm commentating in it, and John's telling a story, and some of his comrades from that time. It is an amazing, heartfelt story, and tragic, because whenever there's a teenage boy, 19, killed in service to country, it's taken lightly. That's why it's always a pleasure to say thank you, John, for your service to this country and your dedicated faithfulness to this country. I thank you for that. So now we're going to move in to our guest. I did say Shannon. I told everybody. Okay, I got everybody. I don't want to leave her out because.
Is there a
yes?
third book? You said three. Did you say three?
Okay, yeah, right. I said the Seasons of Emma. I thought I said it. I said it on another. And of course, the children's book that I wrote, The Seasons of Emma. You can find that on YouTube. It gives you a little intro. It's the only disabled series children's book that's copywritten and patented, so it can't be duplicated to exploit disabilities, but to embrace children with disabilities, to bring them into understanding and confidence. And that's why I wrote it. It's The Seasons of Emma. And you can go to The Seasons of Emma, I guess it would be in YouTube, by Darren Aquino. And now moving up to our show, we're going to talk about this constitutional infringement on mask-wearing phobias around the country that doesn't cross the line of your 14th Amendment. As an advocate, I could say with absolute certainty it does. But now we're going to hear Lucas Wall's story. He's going to brief us, and then we're going to have a 5-minute. He's going to go all the way, and then I'm sure questions are going to come. So we're going to work this as best as we can, but we want to get the overview of his story so that we have an understanding, so that we can answer correctly and understand what's going on, and so our viewers can understand. So Lucas, it's good to have you. We're happy to have you here to share at Code Win Talk. So say hi to everybody and start where you want to.
Thanks, Darren, and hi to John ×2, Shannon, and the audience. I'm joining you from the Villages, Florida, from my mother's house, where I've been stranded because I'm not being allowed to fly without a mask. I live in Washington, D.C. This whole situation started June 2nd when I went to the Orlando airport to take a Southwest Airlines flight down to Fort Lauderdale to visit a friend of mine who was visiting his mother down there for the summer. He lives in Toronto, Canada. And Southwest refused to give me a mask exemption. And when I went to the Transportation Security Administration checkpoint without having a mask on, I was refused entry into the secured area of the airport and not allowed to board my flight. So 5 days later, on June 7th, I filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court in Orlando, suing the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the TSA, the Departments of Homeland Security, Health and Human Services, and Transportation, President Biden, the Orlando Airport Authority, and the Orlando Transit System over their enforcement of a national mask policy for the transportation sector, which I contend is unconstitutional, violates federal law, and violates numerous federal regulations in place to protect people with disabilities from discrimination in air travel. I suffer from several disabilities, but the one at issue in this case is my generalized anxiety disorder. Whenever I try and cover my face, it instigates a feeling of a panic attack and start hyperventilating, and I'm just totally unable to tolerate wearing a mask. And yet I've had my civil liberties, my constitutional right to travel denied because I can't wear a mask. So when the case started out in the district court in Orlando, I was denied a temporary restraining order by the judge there on the grounds that not being able to fly is not irreparable harm, which I completely disagree with. I appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. They would not even consider the case because they viewed it was too early in the process to consider an appeal. And then I appealed to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas for an emergency writ of injunction to stop all enforcement of the transportation mask mandate until I can get a decision on the merits. Unfortunately, Thomas denied that application, but it wasn't a huge surprise because, as I've been told, appeals courts and the Supreme Court generally are leery of getting involved in a case that is so early. But to me, there's the urgency that now I've been stranded here for almost 7 weeks, and there likely won't be any decision in my case until at least September. And so it's a really horrible situation. I've heard from tons of other disabled Americans and just folks who are either fully vaccinated or naturally immune from COVID and don't want to wear a mask and feel that the science says you don't have to. Even the CDC has said that. But for some reason, they're still enforcing the mask mandate in the transportation sector. And just one other aside, I have a separate lawsuit against 7 airlines, including Southwest, who I had booked tickets to fly on various trips this summer. All of their mask exemption policies violate the Air Carrier Access Act, which is the equivalent of the Americans with Disabilities Act for the aviation industry. So that's where things stand right now. Just kind of waiting. The government has an August 9th deadline to answer my complaint on the first case in the district court in Orlando and to produce the administrative record and also to respond to my motion for summary judgment, asking the court to immediately issue me a judgment enjoining enforcement of the federal transportation mask mandate.
It's funny, Lucas. I'm in both courts myself, and I got a premature response like you did, and with the voter fraud and voter suppression of the disabled, citing the 14th Amendment, among other things, and also the time, the date is funny. It's the same date. My Second Amendment is due on the same date of August 9th. I asked for an extension. Shannon's aware of that because she's been found, because she's helping do some drafting because of my dyslexia. But what I'm in your first complaint, you did not address the airlines, correct? You got them. You.
That's right. I didn't include the airlines in the first complaint because I felt like too much to put into one case. I already have 8 defendants in the first case, all governmental agencies. And so I sued the 7 airlines in a separate case because I felt like the issues, they're intertwined, but they're different. Right now, the airlines' defense is easy. They just say that, well, there's a federal mandate we have to follow, and we're following that. Well, I disagree with that because the federal mandate is unconstitutional and illegal. Correct. In order to really proceed in my discrimination case against the airlines, it would be most helpful to have the federal transportation mandate struck down so the airlines could not rely on that as a defense, and they would have to actually defend their actions, banning people like myself who can't wear a mask from flying at all.
Well, you have 2 people here that would suffer the same harm. The harm that you suffered, it seems that you didn't describe the harm enough. And this is, I'm going through this, and I've done 12 cases. And a lot of it, one judge destroyed the content and the integrity of the case. You're going to run into that, especially now with COVID, or if the judge feels it's a controversy and brings a bias into it, which will affect you and your pleadings to be heard. The harm you suffered was the restriction of your freedom of activity.
That's correct.
There
is a constitutional right to travel between states and to other countries. That's been denied.
We don't want to go to another country. We'd want to avoid other countries that are infected.
Well, my brother and his wife live in Germany, so I was planning to visit them this month, and I've been banned from doing that in addition to friends and family members in the United States.
Our Constitution only covers the United States, so you'd be on your own in Germany. But
well, yes, but our Constitution does cover an American citizen's right to travel abroad.
No doubt, but then you're limited. When you're on the other end, if they say you got to wear a mask, you're stuck. The only thing that
if that's the policy in another country, obviously there's nothing that we as Americans can do about the rules of another country. But we can demand our constitutional right to travel among the states and travel abroad.
Lucas,
that is absolutely correct.
Lucas.
Yes, John.
When you went to Florida from Washington, D.C., you said?
Yeah.
Okay. How did you get there?
I flew down last year before there was a transportation mask mandate. And when the airlines were telling people to wear masks, but saying if you have a medical condition, you can just declare that and you won't have to wear a mask.
Okay. So now you don't want to return back to Washington D.C. because you're waiting for your case? Because you could rent a car. You're not stranded completely. I'm just bringing these thoughts out, okay? I don't want
but hold on.
Yeah, some people said, you can take a bus or an Amtrak, but no, because the transportation mandate applies to that.
Hold on.
I don't own a car. I could choose to rent a car and drive, but I don't want to do that because it's expensive, and I don't like driving on a long trip like that. And also, it's an infringement of my travel rights under the Constitution to be narrowed down to one specific mode of transportation. What if I didn't have a driver's license? What if I had a disability where I couldn't operate a motor vehicle?
It's an infringement of your freedom, period.
And it's unequal.
Gets to decide in what manner you travel. That's your choice. That's your freedom. And we want Johnny Pizza to understand. He's just thinking of, he's also arguing from a different format of standing, thinking, well, he's trying to look at the things that, but you can drive, maybe not.
Well,
You see,
that's what
but
people
that's not
ask.
that's not the
Oh yeah, I've
point.
heard that from a lot of detractors, Darren, that folks say, oh,
Yeah.
well, you could just drive. It's like, well, that's not the point.
That's not
I
the
don't want
point.
to drive.
That's
I
not the
want to
freedom
fly.
in
That's how I
question.
always travel
Well,
between
that's
my
what I'm saying.
mother's and my home.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think by you using the word stranded, you really
He's
minimum.
compromising the integrity of the argument, is what
Yeah.
you're saying, John.
Yeah.
Right, Pizza? You're saying
Right.
he's compromising the integrity of his inability,
I
which
just don't
and
think
his
you use
freedom.
the word stranded,
Well,
that's
let me just say this to everybody. The language in the court and the argument of how it's presented is what determines the victory, together with the statute that should prevail. So you have to argue it along the lines where it meets the standard of favorable outcome. So his right of freedom to choose. Okay,
Well,
this is why also the airline.
That's what he's got to focus on then.
Well, no,
Yeah.
that's part of it. The other part is he was prevented from entry to get to an airline. They stopped him at the door. That's, you see, that's the thing. That's the thing. That's the argument there, because no, you got to wear a mask, which he probably doesn't know now. Lucas probably doesn't know. On the federal court's recording, because I made this argument down here with the commissioners for the mask for autistic children and people with conditions like me from 9/11 that would prevent my airway from breathing the free air that we do breathe. Okay, but the hindrance is the mask. So the ADA jumps in there, and the argument's got to be where the freedom has been compromised must be removed.
Yes.
For the individual, and it interlocks with the 14th Amendment in another way of freedom. So they're interlocutory statutes, and the argument must be clear and concise to the point. How were you deprived? Simply by not allowing you to enter to make your way to the airline of choice, and you were prevented from that form of travel by the agents, associates, affiliates, bosses, managers, and by the other entities there that are part of it. The regular security, the police there, the TSA, which is Homeland Security.
Yes, that's right.
And any guards that prevented you from, but mainly it's Homeland Security. They're the ones that said, nope, you're not coming in. They don't have the right to do that because they don't own the airline, okay? And they're there for the safety of all citizens. Your safety matters as well. It is unsafe for you to wear a mask. You see, you probably didn't phrase it that way. It is unsafe, and it could prevent an exacerbation of your condition that can result in detrimental harm. You see, it's phraseology. Phraseology is important in your argument, and it's a good one. I think it's a valid one. I think you may have been a little vague in your expression of the damage it done to you, because I can see the damage. You know, it's expression, and that's the thing. Anybody else got a question on that or something?
Well, I'm just wondering, there's a constitutional principle of equal protection under the 14th Amendment, equal. So basically they're saying you're not as equal as those who are going to be able to wear the mask. You get subpar secondary citizen status here because of your disability. So you may not travel in this way. Everybody else is free to, but your freedoms are restricted. So are we going to
equal protection is not
ignore equal protection? Should we ignore that because another argument is maybe seen as more effective in the court, or can we use both?
The equal protection clause is a different forum. It's the equal protection clause falls into the due process. It doesn't get argued at the door. So that's why you got to go to federal court. That's why it becomes a civil matter. Equal protection takes over in the courthouse. So the courthouse where he made his argument is now where equal protection has got to be argued.
Yeah, it's obviously not just myself who's impacted by this. There are tens of millions of Americans with disabilities that prevent them from safely breathing with a mask.
That's correct.
Where, breathing is breathing and water and food are the three most essential elements to life. Without it, we are dead. And so
I'll give you another example with the mask. you also get a rash on your face. My wife, we were just at the doctor yesterday, and now they're having complaints of rashing from the mask.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
I've submitted
so there are other
studies as evidence in my case that show the research that there are dozens and dozens of health problems that are caused even to healthy humans who don't have disabilities who wear masks. Dentists are seeing numerous problems with cavities and gum disease and such because of the extra carbon dioxide that's being kept within the surface of the mouth from not being able to freely exhale. So it goes well beyond just people with disabilities, but obviously,
but you have it. But you see,
it's not just people with disabilities who are negatively impacted by mask mandates.
That is not
it's everybody.
Right. Everybody impacted. The freedom of everybody is impacted. You got to remember, when you're talking about the civil liberty of the protection of the constitutional freedom, in your case, you can't go broad. You can't go broad. They don't want to hear broad. They want to hear, how were you deprived? They want to hear you. And then I'm sure, did you outline your disability as how it crossed you, or you didn't get to that stage where he just wanted...
I've outlined in the complaint my disability and included redacted medical records that over
so you included
years
that.
I have generalized anxiety disorder.
You put that in the injunctive relief portion?
I put it in the civil complaint that's initiates the law.
You didn't put it in injunctive relief? You didn't put the medical with the injunctive relief?
Oh, absolutely.
Listen, you want to get to A, X, Y, and Z, and your way of travel is through the air, but you met with resistance at the airport.
Correct. Yeah, it was in the injunctive relief portion as well that was argued.
Yeah, because that's the first portion that goes before the judge, and then the complaint is secondary to that.
Now, the complaint comes first, then the injunctive motion. But in any case,
I hate to interrupt, but I have to leave. I have to go. I have an appointment. I got to be at. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good luck, Lucas. Good luck to you, man. And John,
thank you.
John, good to see you, buddy.
Sorry,
Good to see you, John. Brother, we'll talk later. Let me know how you make out. I'll call you later when you get home.
All right.
Okay.
Bye, John.
God bless, John.
Bye,
Be safe, brother. We'll talk. I'll call you after the show when you get back.
All right. Take care.
John Frantangelo, Last Goodbye book.com. You go to that website and you see that book, and that supports veterans, and it supports the #1 veteran right there, Johnny Frantangelo, Johnny Pizza, my co-host. It's important to go to that website. It'll give you an understanding of the Vietnam era and what those boys, 19-year-old boys, over 58,000 killed in their stand-up for America. The question today is, Lucas Wall's civil rights been violated? As an advocate, as the national chief advocate for 37 years, by these guys declaring my stand as that advocate, as that American who went forth and fought and liberated lots of millions of disabled Americans and lobbied for this change that came in 1990 by this guy. And the question that we're talking about for just tuning in, Lucas Wall suffered an infringement of his constitutional right as a qualified individual under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And it was a Title I and Title III, but Homeland stopped him, so that makes it Title II. The matter changes. As you see, the law changes by the entities involved. Government has an absolute sovereign duty, uninfringible duty that they can't deviate from. You can't distract them, disrupt them. They have to provide him with the necessary and warranted accommodations that provide him access to exit, to come back home to Washington, D.C., where he's lived, where he was held captive in the state of Florida. Did you ever think about bringing in the governor? He also held you captive and didn't stand up in the state's respective own power to override certain other liberties that you have. You understand? You're being held captive in the state now. I bet you didn't even think of that.
No, I sure have. Governor Ron DeSantis has been a major advocate for civil liberties during the pandemic. He signed an executive order May 3rd prohibiting any local entity in Florida from enacting or enforcing a mask mandate.
Yes,
I
he
have
did.
sued the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority and the Central Florida Regional Transportation Authority, as I noted, two state subdivisions who are illegally enforcing a mask mandate that violates the Florida executive order. I have contacted DeSantis's office and the Attorney General's office here in Florida, asking them to intervene in my case because there's a 10th Amendment issue here too.
Right,
The
separation of
federal
powers.
government is telling state officials, such as those who work for airport and transit systems, that they must enforce a federal mandate, which violates the anti-commandeering doctrine of the 10th Amendment. This is also a states' rights issue, which we haven't talked about before. I was hoping that Florida would come into my case as either a friend of the court or an intervener to say that we
Well, the
support
state
this
could have joined the
lawsuit.
motion. The governor could have joined the motion in support. He should have joined mine because he's responsible, because those mask mandates also prevented people from coming out to vote. Okay, we had the
And
mask mandate.
unfortunately, I've not gotten any response from the governor's office, and I have heard back from one of the deputy attorney generals of Florida, but so far he has said that the attorney general of Florida's office is not interested in participating in the case at this time, which is very disappointing because DeSantis has a lawsuit on behalf of Florida against CDC on its outrageous restrictions for allowing cruise ships to begin sailing again. And that case has worked its way through the federal court in Tampa. DeSantis won a preliminary injunction, but then sadly, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals on a 2-to-1 vote suspended the injunction. And now DeSantis may be going to the Supreme Court for emergency relief.
Well, yeah, listen, DeSantis is pretty good. I'm not against him. I met him during the campaign. My cousin is one of his biggest contributors, and that was the owner and creator of Arizona Iced Tea. And because he lives here in Florida, my cousin, and he supported Trump. He gave him one of his PACs of $580,000. But the constitutional right of all of us is the duty of every governor in every state in the union. The constitutional freedoms are not to be infringed upon by any government entity. That's why the ADA says state, local, and federal and municipality, public and private. It's telling America that this limitation that the court has defined an effect of a major life activity requires an accommodation, and we're not saying it's negotiable. It's over. Negotiation is over and duty takes over. The Constitution dictates to do it. It doesn't ask, it dictates. And what we have in this equality protection that was designed for Americans with disabilities, what we see throughout the country is civil disobedience by the state's failure to fully comply. They selectively pick and choose what entity is going to comply, and then they highlight that area. They don't have a choice to do that. They don't comply.
I've been very disappointed that there's not been a single state that has sued the federal government over this federal transportation mask mandate, because there are now 49 out of 50 states. Every state except for Hawaii does not require fully vaccinated people to wear a mask. Yet the federal government is coming in and overruling the policies of those 49 states by saying that anyone, not only an airline passenger, but if I get in an Uber or a taxi or a Lyft to take a trip for 1 mile in my town, I'm subject to the federal transportation mask mandate.
And New York taxis.
Yeah,
New York
it's
taxis.
unbelievable.
They made me wear a mask if I wanted to get to my car in time to not get a ticket. And I didn't have time to argue with it, but I can't breathe when the thing is on, so I'm sitting here holding it away from my face the whole time, which is real. That's real.
This federal mandate affects tens of millions of Americans every single day. Not only the 2 million Americans who take airplanes every day, but imagine all the people who use any form of public transportation to get to work, to fulfill their livelihoods, to get to medical care.
Mhm.
The restriction is just so unbelievably onerous. It's
Yes.
clear
The
that
restriction is intrusive and contradictory to the freedoms we have as Americans. I want
and
to
the
hear.
CDC itself has said that fully vaccinated Americans in particular don't have to wear a mask, that there's this exemption where the policy still applies in the transportation sector.
It's
And it's
completely
just
arbitrary.
totally contradicting itself.
The
It's
injection
arbitrary.
is another argument. The fact that if somebody would try and impose such an infringement of my personal body, which is my property,
Yes,
life, liberty,
that's a
and
whole other
property.
issue than what I'm dealing
Right.
with in my lawsuit.
Exactly. But the main
And
one is
that's a
that I
concern
want
for a
to
lot of Americans
let
as
us
well.
let us do this. Let us hear from our constitutional congressional candidate, who's my friend and colleague. Let us hear his expression, because this will decide if we vote for him or not, or we support his election. No, listen, no pressure there.
Before you
I don't
start,
feel
John,
any pressure.
let me just throw in one key point I wanted to add.
Go ahead.
Some people describe this federal transportation mask mandate as a federal law. It absolutely is not. It is an order of the CDC and the TSA. Congress has never enacted a mask mandate. These policies are from President Biden's administration, and they are completely illegal and unconstitutional.
That's right.
They are not
And-
authorized in any statute by Congress.
And only Congress has the authority to do so. Article 1.
And yet they're doing it.
And
Well,
even
that's
if
the argument.
Congress
They're
has a
doing
mask
it.
mandate, there would be constitutional issues with that. But the fact that it's the executive branch is particularly outrageous and violative of the
outrageous.
law.
That's why the Constitution outlines who the masters of the future are. We, the people.
Yes.
Okay? It doesn't say we, the congressmen. Sorry, John.
No, you're right, and I'm for.
You know,
I am for. You know, as I
let us
said
hear.
on-
Tell us what you're for, sir.
Yeah, well, let's just.
Who
talk
are you?
about this
First, tell us who you are for the new viewers, who you are,
Yep.
how we can get you, and then give us a little story. Go ahead.
I'm John Hayes. I'm running for Congress here in the 5th District of Pennsylvania, right outside of Philadelphia, in mostly Delaware County, Montgomery County, and parts of Philadelphia. You can read my website is Hayes for U.S. Congress, the number 4, uscongress.com. My email's there. Anyone who wants to reach me can email me there. Let's stick with the mask mandates here, because in Pennsylvania now, there's a lot of fights, especially with schools and school districts, which I've been also taking up, with some of my constituents, trying to fight, because the CDC is recommending that in September.
Stay with your sound, John. I'm hearing some sound issues.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I don't want to lose any clarity.
No, okay. The CDC is recommending in September all kids be masked again in school. And then the fact that they're trying to vaccinate kids as young as 11, and then even younger, is becoming a greater issue, especially with a lot of people like up my area. But the mask mandate itself, I've been a proponent of getting rid of masks from day one. First off, outside, we're breathing fresh air. We're breathing air. We're letting the carbon dioxide out. We're not supposed to be breathing it back in. The mask only filters a little bit, and we're breathing it right back in. So, and that infringes on people with COPD, other breathing issues, and as Lucas said, anxiety disorders. People, claustrophobia. I mean, it's a major.
There's also, just so you know, John, autistic children have sensory issues.
PTSD.
We'll see PTSD as well. But see, since I do work in the field with special needs, with autistic children and individuals with developmental disabilities,
Right.
We've lightened up our masks on campus for now, but the word is we're going to be like having masks up again in September. Everyone's gearing up for it and stuff. But our kids, we don't mask our kids.
Okay. But let me stop you there, John. You're saying
Yeah.
you're going to be masking up again. What is your position on masking up? You're saying you're getting ready. What is the position there?
My position is no masking.
What about the safety? What about the safety issue that they're saying this is making you safe? Is it making you safe or isn't it making you safe?
It's not making us safe. Honestly, there was a report out, and I have to laugh when they were talking about the 600,000 deaths of COVID over the past year and a half. Do you know how many deaths were of children under the age of 18?
I don't know.
This because the CDC director was in front of Congress yesterday answering this question. 600. Now, 600 deaths is too high in my opinion. But of 600,000, it was 600 deaths of children under the age of 18.
600.
Yeah. So apparently this virus is not affecting children. Kids can catch it.
But yet they're promoting now. I saw this, what's the name? John Legend. Now they're using entertainers to promote vaccines, which I think is totally disgraceful.
Ridiculous.
You don't use your notoriety, neither should you use someone to force somebody and lure them in by their notoriety to sway someone to get a shot that hasn't been perfected. I'm not getting this shot because I already had COVID. If I get that shot, that's like giving me COVID again.
And see, that's what. Yeah, no, that's why I try to tell people, turn off the news, turn off. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Turn off the news. Stop listening to these supposed Hollywood elites, because they're leading everyone down the wrong road, and they have been.
So what kind of action? We all understand now, and going to help your candidacy. I know you, so I support you. I know the kind of man you are. You're a constitutional candidate like me. In fact, your campaign is modeled from mine. Patriotism is very important. We have horrible leadership, and then we're going to get to Shannon for her comments. What would you do when you're elected to assure? What would you do? Would you readdress these? Go back to the floor with what's going on and the violations? Congress has an absolute duty to enforce the laws that they put out.
Yep.
And it's clarification. See, the Supreme Court likes to do that. But if the Supreme Court is wrong, Congress has the authority and right to readdress it.
Yep.
The problem is Congress has never authorized a mask mandate, and there are numerous bills that have been filed to repeal it, but the Democratic leadership in the House and Senate will not let any of these bills come to a vote because it would embarrass President Biden. This was one of his key campaign pledges, that he was going to force Americans to wear masks. He signed this executive order requiring the transportation mask mandate on his second day in office. Right. That's how big of a policy it is for him. And it would be a huge embarrassment for him to have Congress repeal his mandate, and he would actually have to sign that into law, which presumably he would veto it and send it back to Congress.
Well, that's why he's suffering great controversy. It was bad enough that they interfered with the election, and we're going to soon be hearing about the new tabulations. And just because this was a red state doesn't mean it was legal. Doesn't mean the election was legal. And everybody had the right to exercise their First Amendment and 14th Amendment, because in the 14th Amendment, it's your right to vote, to express your First Amendment. See, those two work together. But when they violated your 14th twice, because the ADA is in place there as well. So when you wrap those all around, you got to interlock them in the argument. The federal court had a message on the phone that said if you have a disability, you are exempt from wearing that mask in the courthouse. And I did not wear one in the courthouse when I filed my claim in Fort Myers. And they had to transfer it. And they were accommodating. But even in the filing of the accommodation, because I had the ambulating that we spoke of when we talked on the phone, some of my disabilities. And my uncle's disability is a mental effect. I asked the court to provide counsel. There are two rules: minor child and mental illness. Counsel must be provided. It's not negotiable. because that's like an advocate. If a minor child can't go into the court and do his own papers, and neither could he plead his own case or cry for help. So by definition, I gave new definition about 10 years ago to people with disability as children. What is their disability? They have no ability to comprehend, nor argue or speak or cry for help. So by definition of the law, they are qualified individuals because their body didn't develop to the age of speech. So they have a speaking impairment, okay? But by definition, a lot of people, lawyers, looked at me and said, you know, that's a brilliant outlook. I said, it's a factual one.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Just because the child is normal doesn't mean he's able. So thereby, he's connected. Everybody like, holy shit, where did that come from? It came from here, which came from here, and 30 plus years experience. What defines the disability and effect of a major life activity? And as congressman, when elected, you have a lot of work to do.
Oh, yeah.
Preserve the civil rights of folks like us three here.
Yep.
Us three
All right.
here. Shannon, what would you like to add?
There's 4.
Huh?
I think there's 4 of us here.
No, 3 of us with disabilities.
Okay.
That's what I was referring to. As if being the congressman, what do you do for us 3? You understand?
You don't have any disabilities?
I was told being left-handed told me in grade school that I was disabled.
No, that's just
being left-handed.
teaching. They ignore that. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
Those too stupid with a disability. Those nuns were stupid.
Oh yeah, I know. Trust me, they still give me nightmares.
And
No,
Shannon?
go ahead, Jen.
Well, 2 things. One is that I'm in Kentucky and Senator Rand Paul is one of our senators, and he's submitting a bill to repeal that law right now.
Yes. Not a law. It's a mandate. It's not
Thank
a law.
you. Yes, you're
But I
right.
can't stand, sorry, Shannon, but I
No,
can't stand
please.
when people call it a law. Congress
Yes.
has never passed a mask mandate, ever.
They
And
can't.
it's only
They
2
won't.
pages. It's only 2 pages at that, and it doesn't, and they're double spaced all the way down, as you know. So it really probably amounts to 1 or half of a page if you it. So I wasn't really thrilled with the wording on it, but as a start, I suppose you could say. The other thing, because it restricts it only to COVID, and this could happen, they could call it something else, and then we're going to be right back in the same situation. They're just going to say, well, that was COVID. This is, Rovid. So whatever.
You see, the thing in that
Or
is,
it's
you got to
common cold,
present
or
the
it's flu.
threat. You see, the thing is, here, everybody, you have to present the threat to be forced to wear some sort of protective covering. You have to be a viable threat. And if they're using a thermometer to check you and you ask your questions and that suffices, why are they making you wear a mask? They contradict their own contradiction.
But since when has having a flu in essence been taken as a threat to your actual
This is not a
safety?
flu. We've seen this kill 600,000, so we have to take it more serious than that. It is a manufactured killer virus.
It's not supported by
bioweapon.
science.
It's
However,
a bioweapon.
it's a bioweapon, and it's also not supported. The numbers are questionable as far as statistics go. Statistics can always be manipulated, but that's been shown to have been done because they're from the start they were okay. I don't even want to go down that road. Just the other point I wanted to make, Lucas, is it's not a point. I was gonna ask you to explain what you have learned about the ADA as relating to the federal transportation executive order against for that requires mask. Can you
Well,
explain what you learned?
Yeah, the ADA does not apply to the airline sector because 4 years before the ADA was passed in 1986, Congress enacted the Air Carrier Access Act, which prohibits airlines from discriminating against passengers. And then the Department of Transportation has issued a whole set of regulations flushing out exactly what the duties are of airlines. And right now, the CDC order, accompanied by the TSA order on federal masks mandate, it requires, or rather allows, airlines to do things that are completely prohibited by the Air Carrier Access Act and those regulations. If you seek a mask exemption, most airlines want you to provide a doctor's letter, which is not allowed except for very specific conditions. They make you do a negative COVID test, even if you're fully vaccinated, like myself, which is completely preposterous and discriminatory because they don't require other passengers to submit a negative COVID test. If you're going to make someone who can't wear a mask submit a negative COVID test, you should be making everyone submit a COVID test. Otherwise, you're discriminating. There are other provisions that they're allowing the airlines to do that are illegal, such as making people request mask exemptions 7 or more days in advance of your flight. My flight was only booked 2 days in advance. How am I supposed to submit an exemption form 7 days in advance when I book a ticket 2 days in advance? And then there are airlines like Delta that make you go through a third-party medical screening when you go to check in for your flight, and they tell you you have to come check in 1 hour before everyone else. Well, that's also discriminatory.
Well, let me add another one to that. Say you're two disabled people. One is of mental effect, where you're pretty much their guardian. Here's the real kicker. They're violating that person's rights through you, and that person is unable to defend themselves. So they're suffering harm without defense. A total and absolute violation to the inherent right of the freedoms in the 14th Amendment, Disabilities Act, along with the other freedoms. You understand? With the due process. They don't process you. No is not the answer you tell a free American in a free America.
You bring up a point I haven't mentioned yet, is the due process clause of the Constitution. One of my arguments is that the TSA has assigned decision-making about who is exempt from this federal mandate to private companies such as airlines and bus companies. There is no ability to appeal. When I was denied entry to the TSA checkpoint because Southwest refused to even consider my mask exemption request, there was nowhere I could go to say, I appeal this, I am dissatisfied, and I want a hearing to determine whether this is legal or not. There's no administrative recourse for that. It's absolutely unconstitutional for the government to give private companies the ability to remove your
citizens' rights. A corporation has no authority over the Constitution or a citizen's rights. That's crystal clear. But
and a private company has no ability under the Constitution or our legal structure to enforce a federal health order.
That's right. They do not. That has
Neither do stores and businesses and restaurants and everybody else.
They did it under the auspice of what the governors and the legislative branches of the local states did. So they decided to violate the constitutional rights of citizens. They took it upon themselves. That's why it's a national problem. And that was the first thing that was said during the campaign that even we got to argue. What are you doing? You cannot infringe a mask. The first thing they did was infringe the mask. Okay? They cannot force your body, your property. Okay? Because the harm it causes to your property when you're disabled is crossing two thresholds: life, liberty, and property. My liberty and my property is affected.
The airline ticket that I paid for was essentially seized by the federal government. So there's the issue, like you mentioned, of property as well. One thing to note, it's egregious for any state or locality to mandate masks, but it's particularly offensive to the Constitution for the federal government to do that under the 10th Amendment, because the states have always possessed the state police power including the ability to enforce public health measures. The federal government does not have that constitutional authority to enforce that within one specific state. If I take a bus in Orlando for 2 miles, there's no federal authority to tell me what I have to put on my face when the state says that you cannot require it. And in fact, I'm sure you know the Florida Court of Appeals recently ruled that any mask mandate in Florida issued by any governmental agency violates the privacy clause of the Florida Constitution.
That's right. I'm aware of that. But they imposed it, and I fought them at a commissioner's hearing, said, if you do that, I'm going to sue you because you can't infringe on this right. You're coming against the liberties we embrace under the 14th Amendment, Americans with Disabilities Act, along with the other constitutional rights that we have, preventing us freedom, but causing us harm at the same time for those selected individuals who cannot wear that mask, who cannot. Here's the words I said, commissioners, cannot, and you will not. I will not let you do this because you serve me and I don't serve you. You work for the people of the United States. Remember those 3 words I told them, we the people? They didn't like me too much, especially that I was a candidate for Congress, but I didn't give 2 shits because my right to breathe is more important.
Yeah, the CDC order specifically says that people with medical conditions who cannot safely wear a face mask are exempt from this order.
Correct.
But
That's
the airlines make it virtually impossible to actually get an exemption, and you don't apply to
That's
TSA.
the infringement. That's the infringement.
They make you apply to a private corporation to get an exemption from the order, which is completely
that's the argument.
illegal.
That is the argument.
It's a shell game.
Yep.
That is the argument.
Exactly.
That is the argument in the court.
Well,
That
we didn't
neither,
say we couldn't do
neither,
it.
neither
It
entity,
was them.
neither entity had an authority that surpasses the authority of the constitutional right of the citizen.
It's conspiratorial.
Neither entity had authority. Neither government entity, neither state, local municipality, or federal government has any authority that Congress did not enact, but already empowered the people with disabilities to have this freedom, but is an accommodation to a health condition. So the argument that you have to put out is arguing the freedom you possess and the relief that the ADA gives you, and that deprivation was removing that freedom from your already constitutional inherent right that cannot be infringed upon, neither by either level of government. That's the argument.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I've sued the Orlando Airport and the Orlando Transit Authority. I also tried to get on a bus in Orlando and was denied because I did not have a mask on. And so my argument in this case is that the enforcement of the federal transportation mask mandate by these local transit and airport authorities violates state law, and therefore the federal order is unconstitutional because the federal government cannot order the states to enforce a federal order.
That's right. They can't. Unless
But they are.
the only thing they can enforce, the federal government through its attorney general is the right of the Constitution, empowerment of the constitutional right. The duty of the U.S. Attorney's Office, the United States Attorney, is to enforce the ADA within the states. That's what it's
doing
doing.
the exact opposite, of course. The Justice Department and the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Middle District of Florida are fighting against my lawsuit.
And that's why I sued Barr, because his duty to uphold my rights comes before his opinion. My right before his opinion.
The ADA is also, in those cases like mine where it does apply, is shirking their duty to stand up for our rights.
Well, that's what I said in my complaint.
When it comes to the mask.
That the governor and the attorney generals of the state and of the United States have a duty to uphold the freedom of mine to protect me. To protect me. The Constitution, Lucas, is the power of it is to protect the citizens. It doesn't protect government because it's a government of the people by the people. But in this case, it was for the government and not the people. That's where our forefathers tell us, tear it down. It's not a government working for you. It's time to dismantle it and rebuild it if necessary. Because
But we don't know how.
of 150
yes, we
million
do.
disabled Americans, when components within the government start to do their own reckless thinking, is what leads to you being excluded from travel, which is restricting your activity, which clearly, you see, they stopped you from going to another state of your home. They held you captive in the state of Florida, and neither the governor or anybody intervened because the duty of a government officer, it's telling when something is wrong within that government by any elected official, it is their duty to blow the whistle. That's why they call it whistleblowing. That's a duty because it impedes the protections that we have. And these dirtbags that call themselves our elected leaders, no offense, John, but you're not there yet. But when you
I'm
get
not there yet.
When
Well, that's
you
why
get
we
there,
have the third branch of government, the judiciary, to settle
That's right.
disputes when the
That's
executive assumes authority that it never has, either under the law granted by Congress and Constitution. We have to have faith that hopefully in this case, the courts will step in and declare this policy what it is, unlawful and unconstitutional.
Well, that's
We're waiting.
That's what we are waiting for, as the correct arguments to come out there. People arguing, they interfere with a lot of pro se claims. They don't get the same treatment as lawyer, judge, colleague. They look at that and they look at us as a pain in the ass when we get there. I got news for you. We are. And I will continue to be the biggest thorn in their side, as I've done for 37 years. I will fight you and beat you because you work for me and I don't work for you. And you better start yielding to the voice and words of the people of the United States of America, because freedom is ours and they don't get to dictate it. They get to uphold it, you know, and you have to look at what Justice O'Connor said when the court limited and then retaliated by issuing a warrant to George Lane because he refused to crawl up the stairs again in Tennessee to be adjudicated, and the judge did not accommodate. The judge, Justice O'Connor, and I spoke with her after that, and she sent me a letter on one of these walls and a photo she sent me. Thank you to Darren and for the prayer and thing I sent her. And she also made a judge remove himself because she found his taking in this claim was biased. And he owned interest in one of the things, and he was dismantling the case. She made him give himself the boot because he had no standing any longer in that case. It was biased. But what she was saying to everybody before we get to say goodbye, and we'll go to a little bit overtime, and then we'll make some announcements about you and you and you and you and me and John, what she was trying to say. And when I read the decision, when the Supreme Court sent it to me after my almost being heard, but I was out of time. I was out of time because the district court made sure I was a day late with my writ, a day late with a writ of certiorari. But in my lawsuit, so you know, I'm suing the clerk for failing to accommodate people under Title II with disabilities, because a disabled person with no arms could not fill out any documents. What is the alternate format they're going to give them? The DOJ says no takers, tape recordings, or you put something else in place because you cannot deprive them. They don't want to address that. Now I'm addressing it because through this race, I couldn't make the writ of certiorari. And this brings me to why she said this, because George Lane refused that. The judge had no authority to warrant him, but had a duty, she said, to uphold his rights. The actions of that lower court judge casted a cloud over the judicial body of government, showing people no relief. It undermines the confidence we have in our justice system, and justifiably so. So I could see the liberty in her eyes, the restoration of it when she was sounding off and chastising those judges. It's the lower court judges that created these problems. That was despicable, she said, that they would do that. The man had no legs, and you hold him accountable for not coming in and put a shadow over his a record that he had no fair due process, no equal protection. So she summed it up. That Rooker-Feldman, that they had sovereign immunity, out the window. No more. Her swing vote opinion, which was huge, because the other judges were like, I don't think so. You don't think so? You think a disabled man should have to crawl up the stairs? And if he refuses, you should issue a warrant instead of having him a phone conversation hearing? You've done this for decades and went to hospital bedsides. But for this man and your building unaccommodated, you refuse? That was her comeback. And that was a huge comeback because she gave in her statement relief to the entire disabled community where the courts are concerned. It wasn't just about the crawl. It was about the duty of the judges and the right of disabled. That was one instance, but she made it clear that you will adhere to every instance. If you don't, you'll be sued. That was the landmark decision for people with disabilities. The day that decision came, I was full with emotion because I was before a battle, and Shannon read the document. A wicked, wicked, evil Judge Joanna Seibert of the Eastern District, a wicked witch of the West. She makes look like a Girl Scout. Not only does she violate the civil liberties of people and her duty to uphold it, she's reckless in her service to the United States of America and putting and upholding due process, equal protection under the law. But if you have a disability, she makes it worse. She was no better than that judge in Tennessee, and I will crucify her for it. We're not done yet. We had a chief judge here, in my case, step up. And he ordered the magistrate to do it because they tried everything to dismiss it. And the chief judge came in and said, you will not be doing that. Your recommendation is rejected, and you will begin to make accommodations in the first instance. And then we will see what others are needed to carry him through. You see, even for you, even in the process of your due process, they have to take note of what your disability or challenge may be. And grant an accommodation. But the fact that they recklessly try and hold back and not expedite a case in such a nature where you are restricted from returning home, that's major. It's not simple. It is a major.
To expedite, and it was denied.
Yeah, they're a little funny down here in Florida. But I'm sure, I'll look over stuff with you and even be a witness to your case. And freedom is ours. It belongs to each and every one here in this room and everyone outside the room and to all the listeners. We should never. And to our candidate and as a candidate, I always promised I would uphold the district's rights before I engage in a duty as a national congressman, because I'm hired by the district to serve in American Congress to enforce your rights. And I will always do that. And, the things that came on the fire in this election was the mask, injections, vaccines, liberties, and voting. All of these are interlocked. And people forget, the simplest thing, like a Braille ballot. Why do only one state have them in 49? Why is that? Why is that? Because this is where the states don't bring equality, and we have to hold the states accountable. And in some instances, the United States government. Listen, if a judge is sitting and she's wearing that robe and she says she works for the United States, guess what? I'm suing you in the name of the United States. And I'm suing you in your name because you really made that decision. They're saying they got immunity. I'm saying she has no immunity under the ADA. She deliberately and willfully and wanted denied me equal protection. And she used administrative power to write it out as things I didn't say, but made you believe it. But she denied me when there was protocol to give me a judgment of default for failing to disclose. She didn't do it. So the challenges you have to face in your pro se are a lot of challenges. There's not just, just getting over the hurdle. There's some more preparation to go back, readdressing. You get a readdress if you want to readdress it and redo the language. We could go over and look at it and maybe add it and readdress it in another manner. That's why a lot of lawyers do that. You see, I watch lawyers, I watch judgments, and I watch the outcome, and I listen to the opinions. And, I see why some dissent and what's this. I look at the reasonableness of it. And then I look at how the attorneys didn't fight the case, because attorneys that aren't disabled cannot fathom. They're going on theory versus fact. And they think, well, if I say it this way, this jury will be happier. No, you have to go through the whole overview. But the court limits its menu on how to address it. Did you notice that when they give you can only do 5 pages, you can't elaborate that much, don't say this, only say that. They stop you. And for a guy like me, that's an impossibility, because 2 sides of my brain function at the same time, which is a gift, but a curse at the same moment, because I can't write on paper like everybody else. I have to use a device because my brain is going and it's crossing over. But I do have a photographic memory. So when we get to your case and that you're readdressing, you can call me as we spoke on the phone. You have my number, and we want to talk over on a readdress, and let's look at how you address the complaint. We can go back on a readdress. It's never final with civil court. That's the thing people don't understand. Civil court is never over because of other cases after rule get you to go back because it was addressed someplace else. It got settled. Now it gives you opportunity to go back. So it's not over. So, and when we get John Hayes in, John, you want to say anything else as we get ready to sign off?
Yeah.
I'd like to say something when you're done.
Absolutely.
Well, the one thing that I would like to say is, and I've been addressing this all day today on Twitter, is someone made a comment to me saying, politicians go to the highest bidder. And the one thing I want to make very, very clear, I have never been, or will I ever be for sale. My name and my integrity are the 2 things that I have that are never compromisable. When I say I'm going to fight for you in my district and nationally, I will. I will do what I say, and I will be the congressman you get a hold of, not one that's just a figurehead that you write and you get you get to boiler
3 or 4 secretaries.
Yeah, it goes through 4 or 5 secretaries before it reaches me. No, it's not going to be that's not going to be my policy. I want to talk to the constituents. My phone, you will have my number. Okay. For emergencies, you will get a hold of.
And what is that number, Congressman?
My number. Let me give that right now.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's
because we're getting ready to sign off. We're going to get some more comments from Shannon, but if you want to give that, go ahead.
Please. My cell phone number, which is directly to me, 610-507-0110.
And that is for the district of where in Philadelphia?
The 5th district in Pennsylvania, consisting of Delaware County, parts of Montgomery County, South Philadelphia, and Southwest Philadelphia.
And who is the incumbent there now?
That would be the one, Mary Gay Scanlon.
The scandalous Scanlon?
Yeah.
Scandalous Scanlon?
Yeah, she's more of a mute than anything. She doesn't say much except for
a non-working congresswoman.
Yeah,
a non-working congresswoman.
Whatever she's told to by Pelosi and the rest of the Sorosites.
Oh, she's a Democrat. Okay, Shannon, what do you have to say?
What is your website, John? Do you have one?
Yes, it's Hayes, Hayes, the number 4, USCongress.com.
Great, thank you. And then I guess, and I wanted to ask Lucas. I met Lucas and he's here today because I found him on the GoFundMe page, and I was looking for similar, campaigns that were similar to mine, and I found yours and was very interested in it because you
What
had
do you mean
filed
by
your
campaign?
lawsuit.
What do you mean by campaign?
So I wanted to answer
What do
that
you
by
mean by campaign? What do you mean by
May I
campaign?
speak?
I said, what do you mean by campaign? Like yours. You said campaign like yours. What does that mean? People watching us. What is campaign like yours? What campaign is that you're talking about?
I wanted to allow our guests to answer the question.
No, you're not answering my question. Does everybody hear what I'm saying?
The
You said
campaign
you
to
found-
end mandatory
You
masking.
You
The
said you
campaign on
found
GoFundMe.
somebody on a campaign. You found them a campaign like yours. Nobody knows what campaign that is.
I don't have a campaign.
A campaign for freedom to breathe freely. Yeah, I do have a GoFundMe page to help raise funds to cover my legal expenses. As Darren mentioned, I am prosecuting this case for myself. I'm not a wealthy person by any means. I don't have tens of thousands of dollars to hire a lawyer to prosecute this case. So if anyone wants to make a donation, you can go on to GoFundMe and just search for federal transportation mask mandate.
Thank you. And then Darren he also has some websites for contacting him that the viewers may like to have as well.
As soon as he comes off mute.
You said some of it. There was a little noise in the background, so to block it out, because the dogs go out at this time as their walks. They're service dogs. And service dogs are adamant on their time, So, yes, he has a GoFundMe page. And I told him to talk about that when he came on and to speak about all the things, because as I'm executing my case, it is very costly and very expensive. Just on appeal forms, you got to pay $500 for an appeal at the 11th Circuit. To file, it's $403. It is very costly, especially when you lost all my money, like in the campaign, and you get disability, and you're on a fixed income, and I'm taking care of my disabled uncle. There are other things that are more important than giving the court $1,000. But the civil liberties of a disabled veteran, I didn't talk about that. It's part of the case where my uncle's vote was not tabulated. He didn't have the right, full and fair right of free voting under the 14th Amendment as well. He was denied that. He was given a voter's card. He was registered, but then they said, we couldn't find you, so your vote for Trump is out. That's wrong. That is wrong. So we've had a lot of unconstitutionality actions by state and federal government, by the elected, not doing their job to protect. And so, yeah, there are a lot of things there. I didn't put a GoFundMe up yet, but I do mention it on my Twitter to help drafters. Drafters would be, you may also need, if they're a volunteer legal aid, paralegals, that's a help too. That's huge help because after you get to a certain point, it's not as much funding for the court, but a lot of paperwork. Comes to a lot of paperwork because you go into 4 and 5 motions back and forth, where their first motion to you is going to be to dismiss. They all come with a motion to dismiss. And then you got to come back with a motion why they shouldn't dismiss. And then they'll come with another motion, but he's wrong. He should. They'll be debating that motion to dismiss through acts of subterfuge when they're talking about the same subject. One subject is here that violates Lucas. Crystal clear. He had an absolute sovereign right and supported constitutionally through and through as to not be forced to put himself in harm's way by wearing a mask, which he cannot do. You see that phraseology there? That phraseology sums it up for Lucas. He cannot. This is not about he would not, he cannot. And because he cannot, folks, the ADA is the paramount supreme protection, in addition, specifically designed for people with disabilities across the country, around the United States, to have that additional protection that addresses the inability, the major effect of a life activity. This suffocates him, so he can't wear a mask, because if he does, you're going to challenge his right to breathe, to speak, and limit him and cause him harm. He may go into an outbreak and have a panic attack, and then have a heart attack from such a severe panic. That is harm defined by the courts. I'm Darren Aquino, the National Chief Advocate for Disabled Veterans, Police, Firemen, and Families for 37 plus years. I pride myself on that because America, disabled community, needs the support of every American to embrace our freedoms. It's a civil right because it falls under the 1964 Civil Rights Act. It now addresses ability. The ability that was limited, that limited us by nature or by affliction or by accident. And nobody chose that. So here on today's Injustice about the civil infringement, Constitution, is it law, is it lie? What is our rights? Today you heard from Lucas Wall and our constitutional candidate, my friend and co-chair in our War Room, Coalition for America, and Shannon, my other co-host and a monitor mediator on the civil rights. You could be sure to catch us if you want to catch up on politics and where we are in our stand. You can go to Aquino4 Congress at Twitter, or Gmail if you need to mail me, or .com to the webpage, or you can go to www.adaadvocates.com. We usually have updated DOJ information there, which another useless component in America that has a civil rights division that doesn't do anything civil except pick and choose what civil rights case it wants to do versus the need of the people having them enforce justice. That has been an experience of all disabled Americans. They have a nice library and a pile of complaints that don't get addressed unless they feel like it. That's not the way the American government was designed. It was designed to serve and maintain the liberties and freedoms that we embrace. Disabled people today suffer the loss of those freedoms. So we need you, the American listener, to step up in your state, around the United States, and get behind candidates like John Hayes. John Hayes is a constitutionalist like me. His platform is a model pretty much to mine. We're friends. In fact, I authorized him to use some of my materials because these are non-funded, non-politician Americans taking a position as our Constitution directs us to. I'm not a popular politician, but I am a well-known advocate. And that advocacy brought me into a place where I can tell you once a week, coming here to Code Wind Talk to address your concerns. So we'll see you next time. Don't forget, lastgoodbye-book.com for John Frantangelo's The Last Goodbye. It's a great story that you want to hear about his cousin and brother who were killed, both at 19 years of age, suffered serious harm that almost killed John, but it surely blew up his cousin, a 19-year-old boy serving this country. The greatest challenge of any war that this country's ever fought was the Vietnam War. Senseless. And the number of dead was over 58,000. American soldiers, boys were killed defending this country. And if they don't deserve your respect, who does? The country has neglected them. And next time we'll address that. We're going to have Lucas come back as we progress with his case, and we'll update you because, you know, and you can learn some stuff from Lucas. You have a place you want them to go also to see you, Lucas? Somebody help or people, they can contact you again directly. You want to say before we sign off?
Oh, talk about your declaration. There's, I hear
I've
some
been
feedback.
collecting declarations from other Americans with disabilities who have been banned from flying. I'm submitting those as evidence in my court case. If anybody out there has been barred from flying or using other modes of public transportation, you can contact me at lucas.wall@yahoo.com, lucas.wall@yahoo.com. I have a simple Word document that's formatted where you can fill in your information and describe in a couple pages the problems that you've had accessing the nation's public transportation system as a disabled American who can't wear a mask.
Okay, that's really good. So we'll put
I'm
that.
hearing some feedback, by the way. There might be the issue of the reverberation.
That could be you, John.
Maybe. That's why I'm covering up.
You gave
Is
a.
it better now? I got a little window here.
Okay. Well, that's a good website, and I'll even put a link to on www.adaadvocates.com where you'll be able to get that link. Send me that link. I'll put that link on our page so people could just link it and see it for any challenges. And up
Email address, not a website. Email address.
it's an email. You said you had a format of something.
Yeah, I send people that when they email
Oh,
me.
you send it to them. Okay.
Yes.
Good. So, okay, you can email him, and then he'll send you that
Declaration.
the prepared declaration where you can send. It would be a declaration in support of his claim. If you're a victim, I was a victim, but I had, I can't be held captive. I was restricted in my activity, but I shouldn't have been. And nobody knows this law better than me. I mean, so I know it is an infringement, and we will prevail, but they're going to just wait it out. The courts are going to use untimely actions to either try and bounce us or hope that we come back. Because if counsel gets in there, they'll just really be overwhelmed. But okay, so that being said, John, it was good to have you. Shannon, as always. And Lucas, it was nice to meet you and have that discussion.
Yeah.
I wish you great
Thanks
success.
for coming.
Yes, thanks for the invitation.
I wish you great success with your case. Anything I could do to help out, I will. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time on another Code Win Talk. I'm
Bye,
Darren,
everybody.
Bye.
and see you next time.
See you then. See you later.